Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jensen. I didn't want to leave you high and dry on the grant assignment, so I thought I would record a brief video just to walk you through some of the sections in a little more detail if you're getting stuck on what to prepare. So I pulled up the grant proposal PowerPoint just to give you some pointers on how to go about doing that. But again, this textbook is going to be your best friend. It has all kinds of help and strategies on how to make your sections a lot better. So pick up the Karsh and Fox text from 2019, the only grant writing book you'll ever need, and it'll walk you through some of the best strategies on how to prepare some of these sections. So make sure you give this a good read. You're welcome to cite this book in your project, but this will be a really good tool for you. So hopefully in the last discussion board, you were able to identify some opportunities of interest to you and maybe even some potential funding partners. So let's jump into the PowerPoint and get a chance to see how this is going to go. So in the abstract, I put a lot of detail in here just to prompt you through the statements to prepare to provide that overview of your entire project. So again, the abstract can kind of be the very first thing that a funder's going to see, which basically persuades them whether or not to even keep reading. So the abstract is really, really important. So I encourage you to follow this in as much detail as possible. But if you go through these kinds of prompts in the abstract, you should be okay. Let's talk about the description and background of organization section. So I've had a few questions come up on this one. And again, remember, this is a proposed or hypothetical grant application that you're doing. You want to make it as realistic as possible and use as much actual data and actual organizations as you can. So again, in the work of a hypothetical, as much as I would like all of you guys to be able to write a full-blown RFP or a grant application, it's just not possible in the time that we have in this semester with all that we wanted to get done. But I think it is still a really good exercise to prepare these sections so that you can have experience in the kinds of skills and strategies needed to provide a compelling project proposal. So to me, this was probably as close as we could get to dipping our toe in the water, if you will. But it's very common for an organization to develop a PowerPoint like this as kind of a grant kickoff to get a team started in trying to put a project together. So this is not a PowerPoint for the sake of making a PowerPoint for class. This is actually very much a part of the grant seeking process. So again, it can take weeks, months, and years to put applications together. And it's made it perfectly clear in your book, right? So I just want to make sure you understand. I'm going into this thinking about some of the limitations that face you as far as what you can gather and present, but also wanting to kind of flex your skills a little bit here. I was going to mention, try to be as detailed as possible when it comes to your PowerPoint so that I can see where you're going. You want it to be really obvious to me. So the description and background section, this is where you present yourself as a grant seeker. And you can pose as an organization. And if you're going to do that, I'd like you to base it on an actual organization out there. You could go as far as to maybe creating your own 501c3 nonprofit organization, but that might be more work than it's worth. So it might be easier just to model this seeking after an actual organization out there, maybe one you would write on their behalf. So this is a chance for the funder to get to know you as a grant seeker and also the organizations you're partnering with and the kind of work you do. So you want to describe yourself as an organization and your capacity to do the work. Now, after you do this, you'll get into a section which is one of the most important sections of a grant, the needs section. And that describes how the work will serve its purpose and focus on the needs of the population and community. It's a very persuasive section about why your project and your community is more deserving of grant funding than someone else's project because of the unique features that your population has or that your program has, and how those needs will be served by the grant and why it's a good investment. So again, the Karsh and Fox 2019 text also helps describe these sections a little bit better too. So just keep that in mind. Program and project description, this is kind of where you can just do some bullet points. Pay attention to page 160 in your book. So again, keep this book really handy. Page 160 will help you on that slide in particular. Okay, So make sure you do that. And you'll kind of just do a bullet point of your activities, your staffing, your funders' priorities, and your population, and matching up the two of you as a good match, funding to seeking. Okay? Then you'll get into a project timeline. You can use a chart or shapes if you wish, if you want to put in milestones and projected dates that your program would go. Be as realistic as you can here. It can take months for things to come together, and you can have a year 1, year 2, year 3 approach if you'd like. And then finally, you'll get into logic models, which we do whole lectures on this stuff, right? So when you get into a logic model, I want you to think about the sections that are a little bit harder. So for example, ideas for outputs versus outcomes. So it's very easy to confuse those two, but remember, outputs are just the direct, immediate results that come out of your program activities. So if you are looking for some ideas for outputs, it may include something like increased job participation by women, fewer children becoming truant at school, increased pay for families. It could be like increases or decreases or fewer or more of this or that, but it's an immediate effect that happens right away. Versus outcomes, ideas for outcomes might include things like increased supports for families, fewer children dropping out of school overall in a district, fewer women drawing unemployment benefits. So those are things that really impact the population maybe a little bit longer term. And then finally, ideas for impacts may include increased family cohesion, fewer fragile families in the welfare system, kids attending college at higher rates, lower dependence on welfare, unemployment, food stamps, or Medicaid. So those are things that kind of take sometimes even within a generation to achieve. So we're talking 7 to 10 years down the road. And to me, it's really hard to predict the future, but this is where you can go big, right, for impacts as far as how down the road your grant will still be seeing the effects of the fruits of its labors, if you will, or the effects. So the logic model part of your PowerPoint will be scored a little bit more heavily just because we've spent so much time on the logic model in this module. So do develop this carefully. And you could even put it in another slide and then drop it in as an image for your PowerPoint. Eventually you get to the research strategy and evaluation section, or your project's method. This is methodology. I realize some of you have had research methods and others of you have not, so it might be a little bit easier for some of you to develop this as compared to others. I understand that, but at the same time, many of you know what a focus group is, or surveys, or participant observation, interviews, data or statistics of your clients or customers or population, and a minimal or beginner sense of how to gather that information to document your outcomes. So you want to talk about, maybe at the end you do a survey for your group and see how things are going, or you look in the data and see what changes have happened, or stuff like that. But again, you want to describe your evaluation strategy. We're actually going to spend a little more time on evaluation in our final module, where we talk about program evaluation. So I realize that this slide might be challenging for some, so I'm not going to be quite as harsh on this one because it's kind of represents where you're at in your training in the major. The budget narrative section, I'm again not going to be too tight on this one too, because often it's completed by an accounting office. So, but just give me a brief overview of where the dollars are going to go, and you can even put a paragraph at the bottom. You can insert a table here or a spreadsheet or whatever kind of makes sense for you that can just kind of give me an overview as to how the money will flow. And letters of support, or MOUs. So this one I got a few questions on from students where they had said, so wait, who's the author and who is this letter about? Essentially, for your letters of support, you have to write 2. Often an organization will want you to author the letter on their behalf, since you know the most about the project as the grant seeker. So then after the letter's written, the partnering organization will often make a few edits of their own and then customize it and sign it and send it. So yes, take on the perspective of the partnering organization as far as the specific supports that you want to provide in your grant project. You want to take that perspective, and again, it's kind of like someone saying, I want a recommendation letter, and you may not be as familiar with them as you'd like to be, so you're like, well, can you come up with some talking points for me, and then maybe I'll fill in a few of the details, and between the two of us, we'll come up with a good letter. It's kind of like that. So remember, MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. So where you kind of are seeking joint ownership of the project, or at least joint support. Okay. Then at the end of the presentation, you'll get to this slide, appendices. This is purely optional. Anything else that's relevant that you think would be helpful to the grant reviewer that you didn't get to include in a previous slide. You do not have to do this slide if you don't want to, but if you want to utilize this space somehow to maybe show some charts or graphs or anything else, you're welcome to do that. And then finally, just a references slide in APA format, double-spaced, hanging indent. Make sure that you kind of format them properly as you would on just a regular document. So again, hopefully this gave you a chance to kind of look through the overall presentation as far as what it's about, what the purposes of the sections are. I wish we could write a full-blown grant application this semester. I really do. But this is probably the next best thing as far as giving us a chance to prepare ourselves and practice some skills on something you've never done before. But when you think about it, for those of you, again, that have had research methods, this is not that different from writing a major research paper where you have sections that document what is known about the area that you're talking about in your paper. That's like a literature review. You have a methodology section. You have an evaluation or data. You have results. And then you have kind of a conclusion about what to do next. It follows a lot of the same training that you have been given in your sociology or criminology degree. So this is kind of that last emphasis that I have, is to say, no, your major is not for nothing. The skills you're getting are skills that are very applicable to things like grant writing, things that are incredible skills to have, data analysis, evaluation, being able to pull together funding for your organization. That's pretty incredible. So again, keep that in mind, that these skills are actually in high demand out on the labor market, and they can be used for all kinds of good. So again, jump into your text, give it a really powerful emphasis, be detailed, be clever, be creative. You get a lot of freedom and flexibility here. One other thing I'll mention that I will be on the lookout for is back in the needs section, you want to make sure that you're using as much data as you can and you're citing that data. So if you're going to go to the Census Bureau to go pull county statistics or state statistics that describe the population you want to work with, make sure you tell me where you got those from. Or it could be from a school district or a hospital or a clinic. So again, a lot of this information is available in open sources on the web. You just have to go hunt it down. So again, make this as compelling and persuasive as you can, and you'll definitely score a lot higher. Well, hopefully you found this helpful, and please reach out if you have any other questions. And I've received some really good questions so far, and I appreciate that. Good luck on your proposal. This is kind of the big project of the semester, and I'm excited to see all that you come up with. And again, you don't have to use this exact background in these slides, but you do want all these sections in there. So if you prefer a different layout that maybe is easier to work with, you're welcome to do that. But just make sure you have the same number of slides, the same titles, and the same sequence, so that when I score it, I have a consistent record to score with. All right, good luck. Bye-bye.